It was 1990, the last full year of the Soviet Union's existence. Dr. Johannes Reimer of Germany and the Canadian businessman Art Fair were traveling by train from Moscow to Leningrad. They were thinking and praying as to how to bring the gospel to the youth of the Soviet Union. And one of the outreach methods that crossed their minds was camping. And the Canadian businessman said, "I know the couple who can do it." He gave Johannes Reimer Dave Lowen's telephone number, and a few days later Dave and Elfrieda Lowen received a phone call to start a movement of educational Christian camps across the USSR. At that time, Dave and Elfrieda just left Camp Arnes in Canada, where they had served as directors for 30 years. I got to know Dave and Elfrieda Lowen in December 1991. That was in South Russia, near Belorechens, where Dave and Elfrieda had run their first camp in then Soviet Union. After running the camp in its first site, Dave and Elfrieda understood that the camp needed a different site. They looked at the options available nearby, and nearby there was the city of Anapa, the children's resort city for the whole of the USSR. Immediately Dave and Elfrieda went there to do research, and in 1992 the camp moved to the Black Sea, and from 1992 till the year 2000 the legendary Camp Anapa was in operation. Camp Anapa was the laboratory and the launch pad, and the model camp for all of the USSR. Camp leaders would come there to work, see a high-quality camp model, and then go home and use that model to run their own camps. In 1994 we decided to run a Christian camp for our church in Vinnytsia, Ukraine. We didn't know how to do it, so we took a look at the non-Christian camps that were still using a communist pioneer camp model with 30 to 40 campers per counselor, and all of a sudden someone brought David and Frieda's newsletter where we read about Camp Anapa. There was also an invitation to the staff training workshop that was going to take place at the camp. We had no idea what the word workshop meant, we had none of those at that time, but intuitively we understood that was exactly what we needed. Those were difficult years financially and in terms of other things. Many people were losing their jobs, so our camp team put their money together and we sent one girl to attend that staff training workshop. As I said, we had our own idea of Christian camping, and the girl was taught at Anapa a different idea of Christian camping, and the difference was huge. In the communist camps there were 30 to 40 campers per counselor, and the counselors most of the time would have fun with one another, paying little attention to the campers. We kind of liked that, and the girl we had sent to the workshop told us there should be 7 campers per counselor. The counselors must be well trained and spend 24 hours a day with their campers, teaching them Bible lessons, doing sports with them, etc., etc. The first staff training workshops took place at Camp Anapa. They were 14 days long, and there were 2 workshops back-to-back to accommodate all those who wanted to attend. Students would come from Russia, Ukraine, Moldova, Belarus, Georgia, from the Baltic countries. They would learn how to run camps and go home to run their own programs. At that time, the idea of Christian camping was quite new to us. Before that, we would come to camp for entertainment. Our programs had no purpose. So we went to a CCI staff training workshop. We liked that CCI was offering a system, a structure, a plan, and all that actually worked. So we came home from the SCW and applied the knowledge we had received, and our camp turned out to be very effective, better, more fun, and everyone loved it. My first staff training workshop in Anapa was a pleasant shock for me. It was in 1995. I had never before been in a place where so many Christians from different denominations, different cities and countries would come together for training and fellowship. CCI workshops at Anapa would make the students into one big family, once and for all. Svetlana came to that staff training workshop not only as a student but also as an ambassador. Her assignment was to persuade Dave Lowen to organize a staff training workshop in Ukraine. Our camp director Anna Gubayeva had been to St. Petersburg to attend the camp director seminar. These seminars were held in winter. She was and is committed to God and camping. When she came home, she couldn't shut her mouth for a month. So much she liked what she had experienced. So in 1995, she made 4 of us from our camp to attend the staff training workshop in Anapa. And to me she said, "If you can't persuade Dave and Elfrieda to come to Ukraine, you better stay over there and not come home." I didn't know who Dave and Elfrieda were. I had heard of them as being important people. At the workshop, I was in Dave's program leader's course. I was listening with awe, excitement, and a little bit of fear. So, one day, Dave told me to miss a class and invited me for a long meeting. We sat down, and he began to ask me lots of questions about Ukraine, about the place where I lived, how far Chernobyl was from my home place, how I saw our camp in the future. After answering a few questions, I interrupted him and said, "You know, my camp director told me not to come back home unless I persuade you to come to Ukraine and run a staff training workshop there." Saying those words was like a huge risk for me. We thought of ourselves as small people in those days, and Dave was very big in my eyes. So Dave asked, "Is it realistic to run a workshop there?" I didn't know whether or not it was realistic, yet I replied with confidence, "Yes, it is realistic." And he said, "Okay, let's continue this conversation at the camp director seminar in winter." So, in winter 1996, I went to the camp director seminar in St. Petersburg. I knew we would have a long conversation with Dave, and as a result of that conversation, in May 1996, we had the first CCI staff training workshop in Ukraine. I was not alone in that conversation. With me, there was Vasily Zavorotny and Anna Gubayeva. Dave and Elfrida responded with joy to Vasily Zavorotny and Anna Gubayeva's invitation to come to Ukraine and run a staff training workshop for Ukraine and Moldova. Dave and Elfrida were waiting for that invitation and were ready for it.
Дэйв этого не боялся, он ждал этого предложения, и он был к этому готов.
The first staff training workshop inspired me by its atmosphere. Students came from all over Ukraine and Moldova. We had never met before. The students represented different denominations, different churches, and the atmosphere of unity, friendliness, kindness, openness, it was strikingly new to all of us. Something totally unusual, something unique was happening there.
Что-то совершенно уникальное происходило на этих семинарах, вот именно та атмосфера.
We already had some of the nationals trained at Camp Anapa, so they formed the core group for running the first staff training workshop. Our people served as program leaders, taught the Bible lessons, music and sports. That was the time of first love for Christian camping. We were getting to know each other, making lots of new friends. I had attended a few workshops at Anapa, so we were using the same model to run our staff training workshop. We had no other place to learn, so we had to rely on our memories and notes. After the first staff training workshop, we at CCI Russia were praying for a leader to emerge in Ukraine. CCI needed a local national leader. Everybody understood that there were many camps in Ukraine, and there was a great need of a leader who would take responsibility for the entire ministry. So in 1997, during the second staff training workshop in Ukraine, there was an appeal made to the Ukrainian camp leaders as to who would be able to take the responsibility, and Timothy Malov rose to the challenge. Why I decided to rise to the challenge? I had experienced that unique atmosphere when camp people come together, and I wanted many more camp leaders to experience the same. Why me? I don't know. Probably I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I'm thankful to Timothy in a special way. He was able to pull together his willpower, his spiritual and physical strength to assume the responsibility to lead a new, and I would say unpredictable organization. And his input was great. What he did was very pleasing to God. The core group who helped organize the first two staff training workshops, formed the CCI Ukraine board. Anna Gubayeva, Lyudmila Stepanchenko, Lyudmila Morozova, Nikolai Shamarin, Elena Baidachna. Timothy began to build contacts with different camp leaders. The board members began to build contacts. A newsletter was published twice a year. A CCI brochure was printed. Timothy would send it out to churches. We had a team that was ready to plan the next staff training workshop, and so on and so forth. I'm sure that even if it hadn't been for me, the job would have been done anyway. The reason is not me. In the year 2000, Timothy Malov said he had to go to school to do his bachelor's degree in theology. The board of directors, after looking for a new president for a long time, elected Vladimir Dubovenko as CCI Ukraine president. The board was ready to register CCI Ukraine with the government, and they saw that I would be able to complete this task. So they voted for me as president. I remember that board meeting very well. The staff training workshops were increasing. In the year 2000, we were doing 3 workshops back to back, and the movement was growing. We knew we needed a good leader. The search and discussions lasted for several months, up to 1 year. Dave Lowen was very wise in leading the process. He would meet with the board members individually and as a group. And in all those conversations, it would come to Vladimir Dubovenko. Vladimir is a charismatic personality that attracts people. I think that another thing that made us choose Vladimir was that we had worked hard and a lot in those days, and often we would need a kind word of support, and Vladimir knew how to do it. So everybody said they wanted to see Vladimir as president. In those days, personal relationships mattered a lot, and he knew how to build relationships at the first try. We are friends, and if a person is my friend, he or she is a good person. He was a good leader, and he was building the work correctly. He was a very diplomatic leader, particularly considering that we as CCI Ukraine staff came together from different denominational backgrounds. He was able to build relationships with everyone, and we had never had any interdenominational issues. The staff were on fire for this ministry, and they would often go a second and a third mile. I wouldn't have been able to do all this by myself. God was there, and He made it possible for me to get together those who were really on fire. At that time, Oleg Magdych and Vladimir Dubovenko worked together. Vladimir's strength was primarily relationships, and Oleg Magdych was good at administration. In the year 2000, Dave Lowen invited me to work for CCI Ukraine. My first position was coordinator and interpreter. And 3 years later, I was asked to take responsibility for all of CCI Ukraine's work. And for 2 years, I was in it. Oleg Magdych is a friend of mine as well, but our working relationships have never been based on friendship. If we had to say to each other what had to be said, we did it. Oleg would always do grassroots work when there was no one to do it. I first met Vladimir Shevchenko at Camp Anapa during the staff training workshop. What I liked about him, Dave would ask us questions in class, and we as Christians in those years were not used to openly answering questions. We were afraid of speaking our opinion, even if we had it. And Vladimir would always encourage us to answer. Why are you silent? Say what you think. He would always give us some prompts to direct us to the right answer. Perhaps for some people it means nothing, but for me, for my character, it meant a lot. For me, it was the only right road that I had to take, and I'm happy I did it. God knew He wanted me involved in CCI ministry. That is why He had arranged it for me to learn English at a university, and then had me work as interpreter alongside great leaders for many years. I'm sure these 20 years had to be lived the way they were. God called me into CCI ministry in 2006. Before that, I had been a youth leader in my church. I had always loved youth because youth is our potential, youth is our future, and youth is power. I could see how powerfully God was using CCI to develop youth, to influence the young generation in Ukraine. That is why I was there. I've been CCI Ukraine president for 3 years. In 2016, we are celebrating CCI Ukraine's 20th anniversary. We are thankful for everyone who has invested their lives in CCI Ukraine's ministry. I am thankful to everyone who has been with us to teach, pray, or donate. Today we work with about 200 camps in 6 countries: Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Moldova, and Tajikistan. Every summer, about 30,000 campers attend CCI camps in these countries. CCI Ukraine runs 2 camps of its own: Camp Alpha, a co-ed outreach program for teenagers, and Camp Vertical, a leadership development program for boys. Annually, we run multiple training events and publish a Camp Bible program, which is offered to the entire camping community. We test-run this Bible program at Camp Alpha first, make corrections, and then make it available to the camping community. Thanks to our brothers and sisters in Canada, we own a tent camp. We use it to run our own programs and to rent it out to rental groups. We have also purchased a facility that will soon be used for small group training events up to 25 people. Our purpose is to build an association of quality Christian camps that value excellence. To this end, we are constantly looking for new ideas and innovations. We are happy to be part of the large Christian Camping International family. Better together. That's what we strongly believe in.